Hello, world. I'm Claire Moon. I'm back on my YouTube channel and I'm here to do a forecast for May. So, welcome. Just so you know, this is my first time streaming, live streaming. I'm piping from Zoom into YouTube. There is a little bit of a delay. So, while there is a live chat, and I would highly encourage that you use it if you do happen to be here, it might take me a little bit to respond to that. So, I'm going to be checking in periodically through the hour. Might go more than an hour, usually do for this, but I'll be checking in with the chat. So with that, let me share my screen. And I do have the captions going on the bottom. I know that YouTube does them as well, but let me know too. I'm going to make sure that I get that locked in. So this is a very experimental, not a good sky to do experiments under, I don't really feel like, but here we are because it's the end of April. And we got to talk about May. So for those of you who are already subscribed to me and who know who the heck I am, I'm an astrologer. For those of you who are new, hi, I'm Claire Moon. I'm an astrologer. And once a month, I basically have all of my people come together, all 5 of you, and we go over the next month's astrology weather. If you have any questions and you are in the chat, you can always feel free to ask them. If they're personal chart questions, I'm probably not going to be answering them. But if you do have questions about the weather, happy to try to field those. And with that, I'm going to jump right in. So hopefully you can see my screen and you can see a chart on that screen. It says Libra rising. That's arbitrary. I just have that on there for no reason at all. So you can feel free throughout this forecast to be ignoring the rising degree and the midheaven degree. They're up there, but they're not really of much concern. Let's see. So May. I'm going to just hold on. I'm figuring out the technology. I got to see where this chat box is. Oh my gosh, there's somebody here. Carrie, hi. So it's working, it appears. If you can't hear me, let me know. You should be able to. Yay. Okay, cool. So again, I'm going to be checking in with that. So let's get my note skis up. So we're really starting this month with what's going on right now, which everybody is talking about, and that's the eclipse. So right now we have the sun in Taurus. We've got the north node Rahu here as well in Taurus. And the moon we can see is just about to leave Aries, and it's going to be joining the sun in Taurus. So what's really starting off the month of May is some fireworks. Pretty much. We have an eclipse, number 1 of the pair, because they come in pairs, right? And then on the 15th of May, we're going to have the second eclipse. So this is really kind of helping to frame the month out as far as the sky weather. I'm going to flesh that out and talk a lot more about that, but I just wanted to call that out. As far as other happenings, we have a ton of ingresses this month with a lot of planets going from one zodiac sign into another zodiac sign. So I did notice that as quite a big signature. I guess I'll just name off some of these ingresses here. On the 2nd, we've got Venus going into Aries. On the 10th, we have Jupiter going into Aries and joining her. On the 10th, we also have the sun ingressing into Gemini, starting Gemini season. Holla. We have Mercury going back into Taurus after having gone into Gemini, and that's on the 22nd. On May 24th, we've got Mars going into Aries, and on the 28th, we've got Venus going into Taurus. So Venus, she's booking it. She's gonna run right through Aries for the most of May, and then she's gonna end her month back in a comfortable situation. Venus is currently in a comfortable situation. She's going to have an interesting month ahead, and then she's going to be in comfortable grounds again by the time we reach June. Now, I think one of the main, if I could give one chunk of advice for this month for people, is throughout the month as we go through May, what begins as more watery connective energy really starts to become more dry, hot energy. And depending on what you need, depending on what you're looking for, you might want to do certain things at certain times of the month, right? That's why we look at the sky weather. And so to me, it looked like if you have more connecty, things that you need to be more of a charming, smooth operator, a lot of like peopling things or diplomatic things, do those toward the beginning of the month. Because as the month goes along, it gets more assertive. It gets a little spicier. It goes from more of like a one love kind of vibe to more of like victory will be mine sort of vibe. Now, if you need assertion, if you need some of that kind of, lift to get you to do the thing that you need to do and to take that step, then as the month progresses, that might become easier and easier to do. So it depends on what you need, but I just wanted to throw that out there. We do have some Mercury action this month as well. I'm going to go through that. We're going to have the Mercury retrograde talk. We got to have the Mercury retrograde talk pretty much every time. So I'll go over that, what we need to know there, because we all get freaked out about those, right? And that actually on the 10th is when Mercury stations. So you can write that down in your calendar. Mercury will station direct again on June 3rd. So it's going to spend, 2/3 of the month, 3/4 of the month going in the opposite direction. We have Mercury Cazimi on the 21st. And I already talked about those lunations. So I think that's pretty much the general notes that I had. We also, another general thing is we just have a lot of sextile action happening all month long. Either we've had a sextile of planets by sign between Pisces and Taurus. So more of those receptive, slower signs. That's where a lot of the action has been. And what we're going to end up moving toward as the month progresses here is more action in Aries and Gemini. And then we're going to get a sextile there. So what that means is that that's a moderately helpful energy. It's not bad. It's pretty good. I don't hate it. I like when sextiles are around. Sextiles require us to put in some of our own effort. You're not just going to get things falling into your lap of good fortune when a sextile comes your way. Certainly not like a trine. Not that trines really do that either, but they're said to be half as good. I was just thinking about this because someone was talking about it on Twitter. But in history, sextiles were said by some authors to be half as good as a trine. But my response to that is like, sometimes half is what you need. Sometimes you don't need the full trine. Sometimes I order half a sandwich on purpose. That is what I want. That's all I need. So I like sextiles. I think they're more constructive, certainly more constructive than a square or an opposition. So overall, I'm excited for this month. I'm excited to see how the puzzle pieces are going to move around the board of life that we all have, because when we get this hotter, drier type of sky, we have more action, we have more energy, we have more movement, versus when we're more of like an earth water kind of cooler, wetter situation, things are not quite as assertive and externally active, if that makes sense. Okay. Enough of my overall thoughts. Let's get into this month actually. But before I do that, let me check in and see what's going on. Yay. Okay, it's working. Everything's working. Wow. Because Mercury's slowing down. He's still direct. He's still going forward, but is slowing down. So I was like, I hope all of my technology works okay, So with that, we have the first of the month. Let's go to it. Yeah, I'll talk about the eclipse because it's now. And even tomorrow, the moon is still going to be, May 1st, or in 2 days, May 1st, the moon's still going to be in Taurus. We're still going to be like that eclipse pretty much still happening on Sunday, the 1st of May. So what is this? It's so interesting. Eclipses are interesting. This one is particularly interesting. We've got quite the combination of unstable energies and stable energies that are together in the same basket. So we've got Taurus. Taurus is, in general, one of the more stable places in the zodiac. It's Earth, it's a fixed sign. It represents the middle of the season, the time of the year when things are consistent. We know what to expect when it comes to the weather, to our activities for that season. So this is usually a pretty stable place. The moon loves to be here. The moon is exalted in Taurus. And a new moon in Taurus is generally an excellent time to be doing the whole stereotypical, internet witch. We're doing intentions. We're making an intention. We're going to start something new. We're going to plant seeds. And like, this is really, truly the most stereotypically perfect place to do that. So I certainly don't want to discourage that. And the sky weather for this new moon, if we just ignore the eclipses for a minute, just pretend like they're not there. This is a beautiful new moon. And I don't normally say that. In fact, usually I'm saying the opposite. Usually I'm the one who's like the not fun person at the party, coming in being like, oh, hey, you like that moon? You like that new moon? You like that full moon? Well, here's why it kind of sucks. But this one, I can't do that as much. And that's because Venus is in charge of it. She is the one who's ruling over the sun and the moon when they are in Taurus, having this eclipse and this new moon. And so we've got a moon who's in good shape. We've got the ruler Venus, who also is in excellent shape. She loves to be in Pisces. Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, is here, adding extra benefit and stability. So overall, this whole situation, it feels to me like we have a very stable garden in general, not the full story, because I haven't talked about Uranus yet, and I haven't talked about the eclipses yet, but bear with me, I have a long point. We have a very stable garden in general with Taurus. And it's like we've got miracle grow just sprayed all over it. Like, that's what the Pisces, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, all of that says to me. Is it's like we have miracle grow for our garden. So whatever we want to plant, we have the resources available to us. We have the ability, we have the hope, we have the optimism, and Mars just happens to be here. He's just hanging out. So he is adding that motivation, that energy, that ambition to actually act on that inspiration and act on what it is that we might want to grow. Cool, right? Wow, amazing. Let's intent on all of the things, but hold up, wait a minute. We do have this very interesting lack of stability, though, in the form of Uranus and in the form of Rahu here. Both of these add instability. So I'm going to back up for a second and just talk about eclipses, because I just talked about what really sounds like very auspicious, or that auspicious is just a fancy word astrologers use to mean good. It's good. You want to do things under those skies usually. And the hope is that they will turn out a little bit better than they might have otherwise. That's what these good skies are. I just have to interrupt myself. There is like a very beautiful bird out the window. Wow. It's still Pisces season, I can tell. But anyway, so eclipses, they're not stable. Why are eclipses so unstable? Why is everyone hating on eclipses all the time? Now, this is because, historically speaking, the sun and the moon are our life-giving bodies. They are what we think of when we think about life. Like, we can't have plants unless we have the sun, right? We can't have growth unless we have light. And that was a big deal. Another thing is that they are a light source. And 3,000 years ago, we didn't have electricity. We only had the light sources that were naturally provided or that we could make by fire. So people would often, the full moon versus the new moon, that allowed people to do different things outside at different times. We made, schedules about ritual around these things, religious ritual around the light in the sky. So the light and the amount of light that the moon and the sun are giving off at any given time in the sky was and still is one of the most important things about astrology. It's one of the most important things about just life as a human living here. And when an eclipse happens, it's interrupted. All of that vital life flow, interrupted, disrupted, dysregulated, not what we expected. So if it's 3,000 years ago, this is about time where you're getting pretty creeped out. You're not appreciating that the life-giving energy of the sun or the moon is being interrupted. And that is why we're kind of like, I don't know if I want to do a bunch of kitchen witchery, during an eclipse. I don't know if I want to root something and grow something in these soils in particular. But at the same time, I was thinking sometimes instability is exactly what we need. And when you are making a garden, we can imagine these extra firm soils of Taurus happening. That, like I said, this is one of the more stable places in the zodiac. And what happens when the earth gets too dry, too firm? We can't put any seeds in it, so we have to disrupt the earth. We have to come in with that pointy, like turny thing that you see your dad, in the garden, just like tilling up the soil, the hand tiller. We need to hand till some things, and that's what Uranus helps us do. And that's what the eclipses kind of help us do in their own special way. Uranus really allows for change to occur. And so if you need some change to happen, this instability, this lack of stability here that I was just previously complaining about, it might actually come in really handy. And it might actually be just the thing that we need to make the changes that we need in our life. So, again, April 30th, tomorrow, if you're watching this right now, and May 1st. And then again, the other part of this story is on the 15th of May. So with that, look at your chart, find the Taurus part, find the house. If you're looking at a chart generator online, you can look to these little numbers. These are all the houses. Find which house in your chart holds Taurus in this very arbitrary, random Libra rising chart. The 8th house you can see is Taurus, right? So that's what you want to find in your chart. And this is the area of life that's going to be describing where these changes might be happening, where we have opportunity to start something fresh, and to really do something with Uranus there in a way that is completely different, that, really does not go along with the way that we have previously done things. That's kind of the idea. So with that, oops, where did my screen go? That's pretty much what I think about the eclipses. That's my spiel. So with eclipses, they do come in pairs and they come every 6 months. So if you have something going on now, 2 things: think back to last November, about November 15th, middle of November, December 3rd or 4th of 2021. That was actually the December 3rd and 4th eclipse that we just had. That was the last one that we had, and the first one that we had in this Taurus and Scorpio axis. This is the second now and the third that's going to be happening. But if you think back to 6 months ago, think about what was going on in your life. Look at what's going on in your life now. And then 6 months from now, revisit it. See how things are going. So that's how I use eclipses, basically. And they are great beginnings, great endings. I didn't say that. They are great beginnings and great endings. And I learned that from Chris Brennan. Another thing I thought of too, and this is more from, like, I think I heard Rick Levine say that Uranus was like sometimes Uranus transits, it's like lightning in a bottle, or I don't know, maybe it wasn't him who said it, but somebody said it was like trying to capture lightning in a bottle. And what I thought was really cool about this new moon in Taurus, about this eclipse in Taurus, is that what is usually a very not stable situation with Uranus, with eclipses, and honestly as well with Mars. Mars adds to this. Mars is sextiling Uranus. And if we wanted to add some more fire to it, add some more, well, he's in water, but add some more energy to it, add some more heat to the mix, some more activation. It's just really super energetic. And I feel like because it's all happening in earth signs and water signs, nocturnal signs, it's slowed down enough that we can actually work with it a little more effectively. Usually this instability, like let's say if this kind of thing was happening in an air sign or a fire sign, it wouldn't be nearly as stable as I think that this one is, being in earth and water. So it seems more workable to me for that reason. It feels more malleable, like we can actually maybe even catch that lightning in a bottle just long enough to do something constructive with it. I'm going to be up until midnight because I made coffee at 6 p.m. Oh, why did I do that? Okay. It's because I was feeling so sleepy. All this Neptune Jupiter business It's been happening on my moon, and I have been napping a ton. A ton. So what happens next? Sorry. Let's get back to my old notes. So what happens next? There's definitely more to the month. And one of the first things that happens is we get Venus going into Aries. So Venus was in Pisces. She's having a very large drop in her dignity. And dignity is another fancy astrology word that basically just tells us how easily that planet can do what it's trying to do. And she had a lot easier time doing what she does best in Pisces versus in Aries. Now, granted, she gets to do other things in Aries that she doesn't normally get to do. So that's kind of cool. But her job is connection. Her job is to harmonize, to create, to bring people and things together. And it's easier to do that in water than it is in fire. That is for sure. So that's kind of why I was saying if you have more soft, smooth operating that you need to get it done earlier in the month while we still have more of this Pisces influence. Because especially once Mars gets into Aries closer to the end of the month, and then we've got Jupiter in Aries and Venus in Aries, that energy is much more brusque. It's more frank. It's more crass. It's not going to be the smooth operator that Pisces can be. So just throwing that out there. So with that, I don't think there was anything else I wanted to say. Oh, you know what else too? I didn't mention, but right before Venus goes into Aries, another thing that was interesting was that we've got Pluto. And this adds, it's just like we already had so much going on with this new moon, all the things that I was just talking about. But at the same time, Venus and Jupiter are being sextiled by Pluto. So that just adds even more. But now there's like power dynamics involved, and there's leverage, and there's persuasion, and there's some things with Pluto that bring in a level of potential distortion, a level of control or power dynamics of overall corruption. That's what Pluto does sometimes. So again, I don't like to just automatically assume that something is helpful or unhelpful, skillful or unskillful. It really depends on the context. So if you are in a situation where there are not a lot of facts, if you are in a situation where you don't really know what's going on, you don't really know what the motives are of the people involved, or what's happening, just make sure you got your facts straight before you act. Or if you're feeling like someone's trying to manipulate you, just be on the lookout. We've got Neptune here involved. Neptune fogs the details. It just makes things harder to understand. Neptune is the turquoise trident looking fellow here. And Pluto, Pluto does a lot of things, but it's not always honest. Let's just say that. So between these two, we can get some funny business. So just make sure no one's trying to pull any funny business on you as we enter into this month. And I had kind of been talking about that last month with the April hype train, how like all of these Pisces planets, we had this potential for delusion, essentially. I don't know if y'all were experiencing that. If you do have stories, drop them in the chat if you're comfortable. But April certainly posed just the theme of delusion, coming at it from both angles, either still deluded or coming out of delusion. Those are both parts of the delusion process. And I have been noticing, I think we just all kind of assume that in Pisces, you're going to be deluded, with Neptune there and all these planets, we're going to be in a fog of indulgence or pleasure or something like that. But what I noticed, just kind of people watching out in the world, that I think Jupiter being there, I don't know if it was Jupiter, I don't know, what exactly the mechanics were here, but it seemed like people had kind of an awakening from delusion to some regard. And then there's that piece of acceptance that comes along after that, of, oh yeah, this is how shit really is. And I do feel like Pisces helps us through that process. It's like an understanding and an acceptance of what is real, in the face of conquering delusion per se. So yeah, I remembered Pluto and I wanted to bring that up. He had some interesting elements. All right. If there is a sense of urgency too, so with Mars sextile Uranus, that's a configuration that's actually going to be present for a good long chunk of May. There's like a whole week where Mars and Uranus are sextile close enough within 3 degrees that I just feel like it adds a little bit of restlessness. It adds a little bit of a sense of urgency that might not be rooted in real need. So if you're feeling very inspired, we've got Mars, our planet of action, with Neptune, maybe inspired action, acting on faith. If that is the case, that's great. Sometimes we have to do that. And sometimes it really serves us to act on faith for sure. But just making sure that we're not letting a sense of false urgency get the best of us here. Just compound that times 10 because Mercury is slow. And even though they're not retrograde yet, they're slow. They're moving very slow. So the idea of having real world material facts in abundance this month is not there. And this is advice for the whole month. Like, just do extra double checks on stuff. It's the Mercury retrograde talk. I'll have that in a minute, but as well with Mars and Neptune, making sure that our actions are preceded by double checking that we know what's going on and not making assumptions, because we all know what happens when we make assumptions. So that's kind of the little caveat I saw with Mars and Neptune there. And also kind of, this is your last call, Venus Pisces last call. The next 48 hours, my friends, if you have not gotten your Venus and Pisces luxuriating, bathing, dancing, expressing ourselves, brainstorming, connecting with spirit, cleaning the altar, get all that stuff done in the next 48 hours. Then she's going to go into Aries, which brings me finally to my point. I've been talking for a half hour and we are only on May 2nd. We've got Venus going into Aries. So this is a morning star Venus. She's now in Aries. This is Xena warrior princess Venus. This is, if you're a 90s child, you might know who Xena warrior princess is. If you're younger than that, I can't help you. Google her. She's amazing. But that's who I always think of when I think of Venus and Aries. We take that element of giving a heck about people. We're Venus. We care about people. We care about what we like. We care about our preferences. And now in Aries, we have this fire to act on it, and we want to act on it. One fun thing I think to do with Venus and Aries this month is to really look at what our body says hell yes or hell no to in a sense of preference. So if Venus is what we value and Venus is what we desire, and it's in this really instinctual fire sign that has this really fast way of instinctual knowing, this is where we hear about something, we hear about a concert or going to a restaurant, and we're like, hell yes or hell no. This is a time to pay attention to that. It's a time to get in touch with what your preferences are and how to act on those and how to assert yourself on those. We can also see potential challenges with relating. I mean, in general, Venus likes to take things slow. She's forced to relate a little bit more quickly than she would like in Aries. So she can be a little impatient, especially if she's rushed. But I like that idea of kind of instinctually listening to what our desires and our preferences might be. She does bring some charm to the battlefield. She brings some charm to the athletic field. So if you are an Aries person and you are into all of that athletic stuff, now you can do it and look good while doing it, especially. Let's see. So another thing. So I mentioned that we had that Mars Uranus sextile happening for several days. We can see it hanging on. They're like a 13, 14. They kind of dance along with each other. Another planet that's going to do that, another couple planets, are Venus and Mercury. They are also going to be in a sextile relationship, and they're going to kind of dance along with each other for about it's like 3 or 4 days that they're going to be together. And this is a little bit of, if we could say that's like the fixed star Spica, if you're familiar with her, she is of the nature Venus and Mercury. And so it's of that vibe. It's writing. You know, when you put Venus and Mercury together in a harmonious aspect, we get help with our writing, help with our speaking, our relating, transmission of our ideas, our preferences, anything we have to do with exchange and people might go a little bit smoother on the second, the third, the fourth, just because we have this nice sextile here. And the moon also helps. And sometimes too, Venus and Aries, she knows what she doesn't like a little bit easier sometimes than what she does. So let that guide you. You know, if you're having a hard time knowing what you want, then ask yourself what you don't want, and maybe that'll help. So I think that's all I wanted to say about the second. On the third, yeah, this is when we get that Mars Uranus sextile exact. The sun is also here. So, you know, when we put Mars and the sun together too, that can be at best our healthy ego. That can be my self-confidence, my ability to know that I'm important enough to take up space. I'm important enough to go to the grocery store and continue to feed myself so I keep living. Those are all really good things that our ego gives us. Those are good things that Mars and the sun both help us do. So it's like this kind of energy of becoming that we get with these two when they're together. And Uranus is here allowing us to do it in a different way, allowing us to do it in a novel way. So maybe there's something that we can act upon to embody something new about ourselves. Maybe there's some action that we can take to be a little bit more authentic in our Taurus part of life. So for instance, if you're like me and you're in an Aquarius rising and you've got Taurus in the fourth house, you know, what maybe financial actions can be taken to help with changes going on in the home. You know, that would be one example of how to use that. So we can use those Pisces things, those actions there to kind of help along whatever changes are going on in the Taurus areas. That's what I was seeing today, or for that day. And I like the fourth. The fourth of this month is really nice just because we already had that really beautiful new moon in Taurus. And now we're going to get the moon waxing into Cancer, into its home sign. So we've got a very nice moon. It is picking up light, which is usually a good time to begin things or to do things when the moon is growing. Yeah, I just really like that. It was a nice day. And the next day too, as long as we can get them past 15 degrees, then we've got the moon applying to Jupiter. So also pretty nice. And when I say pretty nice, what does that mean? What do you even do with that? That sounds so vague. I mean, when the moon is doing nice in the sky, basically, that just tells me that whatever activity that I want to carry out that uses my vitality and energy, I might be a little bit more successful when the moon's in good shape, and it's in good shape in Cancer. So I think that that's a good, simple way of saying it. All right. So we've got moon in Cancer. And then on the 5th, we've got sun sextile Mars perfecting. And it really does continue to carry on through the 8th of May. So May 5th through May 8th, we can see that we've got Mars and the sun in that sextile. Uranus is still very much involved. So there is an element of disruption, of interruption, of a little bit of chaos. You know, it might even be having to act suddenly without, you know, really being prepared to do so. It doesn't have to be anything to worry about, but, you know, I usually like to enter days where we're getting a lot of Mars or Uranus activity. I like to enter that time well rested so that I'm able to be flexible and adaptable to any interruptions that might occur. And like I said, Mercury is slow. So we've got a lot of possible issues with connection this month as far as technology, communication, commute, all of those classic Mercury retrograde things. When we've got Uranus involved, it just adds more disruption, more interruption. And so, you know, schedule yourselves kindly this month. put space in between engagements. Don't schedule things back to back to back to back. Allow yourself time. But I do think this May 5th through the 8th, that's a lot of our vitality coming together. You know, Mars is part of our energy and our effort, our ability to exert effort. The sun is part of our vitality. And when they're in a harmonious aspect like this, that just feels like our vitality is able to be, you know, put towards something useful. So maybe the 5th through the 8th of May, able to get a lot of work done potentially. If you've got a lot of shit to do, that could be a time to try to kind of plow through it. Mercury's still sextile Venus for a few days. We've still got that going on. So we've still got a little bit of diplomacy in hand, a little bit of charmingness to work with in our communications. And I think I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. With this, you know, I keep talking about this just kind of potent Mars Sun vitality with disruption. Mercury not being as stable as it usually is, even though it is in Gemini, I know. But again, I like having these more hot, fiery, spicy planets in these nocturnal earth and water signs. I think that really does help keep a lid on a lot of what's going on this month. I think that helps. On the 6th of May, I will point out Mercury gets to its station degree. We reach 4 degrees of Gemini, and this is where Mercury will be eventually stationing retrograde in a few days. So it'll just be hanging out there, really not moving at all. Now on the 7th and 8th of May, I know that I had mentioned that, you know, those are going to be good days with Mars and Sun, having that sextile, a lot of energy to do stuff. At the same time, we do have the moon opposing Saturn. That is always a bit of a roadblock. I shouldn't say always, but you can run into a little bit of roadblocks. You can run into little hurdles or delays during the day. So that, you know, the 7th and the 8th of May, those are days to make sure that you have enough time to commute for sure, because I think what the issue might be would be a delay. That's what Saturn does. That's what Saturn likes to do. It likes to slow things down, especially if you were born at night. And now the moon goes into Virgo on the 9th of May. And this is where we really enter the period of time where there's a few days where I say, mind your own business. You know, the skies are a little spicy. It's a good time to mind your own business. And I'll explain why. We're going to have, you know, the sun is going to finally start separating from Mars. But what we're going to get here is, on the 10th, we're going to get Mercury stationing retrograde. So Mercury, again, in charge of communication. And now that connection might require a second action. It might require us to do something a second time, to redo something. So it's good to know too, if you're like starting a meeting and you have a technological issue, don't panic. It's probably just this kind of sky weather, and this is to be expected. So just take a deep breath and fix whatever thing you got to fix, and just take your time and know that you might have to reschedule something. That's okay. I think what Mercury retrogrades really are is an opportunity to practice mindfulness. Honestly, I think people hate that I say that. I know that we're all very like conditioned to just fear, you know, Mercury retrograde. And I'm really not helping, you know, because I'm like, oh, you know, technology snafus and stuff. But it's true, that does happen. But at the same time, it's a valuable time to reconsider things in our lives. The rule of Ries, that's what you're always going to hear with Mercury retrograde, or just retrogrades example, retrogrades in general, is the rule of Ries, reconsidering, rethinking, especially in Gemini. We're going back to the drawing board. We are bringing in new data, bringing in new facts, new ideas, and we're seeing how we can integrate all of that into what we already have going on. That's what Mercury does really, really well when it's in retrograde. And a lot of times that process of reconsideration or rethinking, we don't do it on our own. Like, we need something to happen in our lives to force us to do that. So it'll be like when you accidentally delete that whole email you just wrote. but maybe the second time you wrote it, it wasn't, you were less of an asshole. Like that could happen. And that could be a really good, that could be a good thing to happen with Mercury retrograde. But that's why I was saying, to moving more slowly, moving more mindfully. I think that's the antidote. That's scheduling yourself less. It is, if you have that privilege, putting, more space in your life to just move more slowly and to not rush. And that usually takes care of a lot of the issues that can happen. Now, another little thing about Mercury retrogrades that we should know is that not everybody is affected the same at all times by them. It depends on your transits, your own birth chart, how prominent Mercury is in your own birth chart. So some people, they're really not affected nearly as much as other people who have Mercury more prominently. And, like I said, if you're not in like a Mercury annual profection year or something like that, it's not going to be as important, really. So certainly nothing to get too worried about, but it's good to know about. But that's a thing. And then look at this is why I'm telling us to mind our own business on this day on May 10th. The moon is our feelings. It's ruled by Mercury retrograde in this case. Our feelings may not reflect what is true. Our feelings are true. Our feelings are very real. But just because our feelings are real and what we're feeling is truly, really happening, that doesn't mean that the actual facts of the circumstances are real or true. And that's the rub here. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, that's strike one. Strike two, we are opposite Mars. Anytime we got moon opposite Mars like this, that could be slightly frictive. That could be a slight conflict. That could be basically how we feel is not jiving with how we want to act, what we are inspired to act on. Something in the feeling center is not going along with that, and we might not have all the facts. So this whole month, I'm going to say it again, move slowly. There's some fog going on. There's some fog and steam through at least the first half of this month. So this is where we just take one step at a time, two steps at a time, and we're not going to rush ahead, even though I think there is a sense of urgency in this chart, this month as well. We're going to try to move slowly, even though it's like Mars and Pisces, Venus and Aries, they kind of have that whole monopoly on desire and passion. And there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of desire and passion going on this month. And that's another reason to slow down. That's just another reason to slow down. So mind your own business. Oh, and then the other thing, strike three, because there were 3 strikes. The sun is approaching Rahu. And now this happens over the next few days in the month, more than mid-month. But when we get sun with Rahu, Rahu adds confusion. And the sun just wants to become. The sun is on its journey of becoming. It would like to exist and be autonomous and move through the world as it would like. And with Rahu there, it just dials that up. It dials up that kind of that internal sense of needing to go and do that thing and become that thing and become that person. It just adds a little bit of that confusion and urgency. That's what the North Node can do. So with the sun there, that's not adding any rational logic to this mix, in my opinion. So yeah, if you're about to argue with someone online, this is not the time to do it. I mean, is it really ever the time to do it? I don't know. That's a different question. So the other thing, we get Jupiter entering into Aries. So the first 10 days of the month, get the last of your Jupiter and Pisces things done that you need to do. So what are those things? Jupiter in Pisces is really great at understanding, at large picture, at seeing the larger picture, making meaning out of things. It's great at forgiveness, great at spiritual stuff, great at acceptance. It's knowledge and learning, it's religion, it's belief. These are all subtle, a lot of subtle, spiritual world type of things get that stuff in the bag the first 10 days. If you have, extra spiritual heavy work that you need to do, I would get it done earlier in the month. Granted, that depends on your chart, but Jupiter is leaving that place. And if you've had a lot of abundance in Pisces, if you've been really enjoying this Jupiter in Pisces season, just know that November, December, he's coming back. So we've got Jupiter in Aries now from now until November. And now that abundance, that understanding, that growth is going to go into the Aries part of your chart. And that's going to get a little watered. And honestly, the Aries lawn, it could use a watering. So I don't hate it. I like it. I'm sad that, we're always sad when Jupiter leaves Pisces, unless you're Bitcoin, right? But it's always nice to have Jupiter anywhere. And now Aries is going to benefit. So look into the Aries part of your chart and look for opportunity and get ready for opportunity. Jupiter does not just give us opportunity without us being there to receive it. So we have to be ready with our skills and our talents and our motivation and all of that. So those opportunities might be coming in the Aries part of your chart. So for instance, if you're like, say, a Virgo rising or something, that would be in your 8th house of other people's resources. You might have opportunity through other people or other people's stuff. So looking to partners in life for opportunities. Or if you already have a partner, maybe your partner will get the benefit and the abundance and steal it from you. That could happen. So that's exciting. And, one interesting thing too, one other thing is that both of these benefics are now tucked away from Mars. Granted, they're ruled by Mars, but there is some time here now where they're getting a sextile from Saturn and they're not configured by Mars. And that takes that's nice. It's like the two planets that are in charge of giving us the good juju, right? If we can talk about it flippantly like that. They're not encumbered in doing that. They can do that. They're not getting any impedance really from Saturn, and they're not getting roughed up by Mars or anything. So I kind of like it. It's nice. Especially nice for our Aries parts of chart. So we're pretty much to the middle of the month now. To recap, we've had Venus and Jupiter, now they're dried off. They're readier than ever to pursue what they want. Jupiter, it is full of our aspirations. Jupiter is our hopes and our dreams. And in Aries, it is so excited to go after them. So if you have projects you want to get done, if you have some shit you got to do, especially if it's seeking knowledge, learning, teaching, anything like that with Jupiter, great time to be doing that stuff, especially if it's shorter term projects. Aries is not one to have a lot of energy for a long time. It's that kind of flash in the pan burst of energy, little sparkler kind of thing with Aries. That being said, that it's a burst of energy. So if we need to really get something started and get something going that is of that Jupiter variety, it can be a really great time for that. The only thing too is just that even though that is the case, it's like we know what we want to do. We've got the motivation, we've got the ambition. By mid-month, we're like, all right, May is going. I know what I want. I know what I'm going to go after. But the navigational equipment we have is on the fritz. It's like the GPS is not in working order. I know you wanted to go on that road trip, but the GPS is broken. So yet again, we come to this place of, yes, we know what we want. Yes, we know what we want to do. We may have to approach this a little bit more slowly and carefully than we might have otherwise thought. So, okay, I'm going to come back to the chat. Okay, we actually have, there's at least one person. Amazing. Hit that subscribe button. Ooh, now I get to say that stuff. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit all the buttons, because that helps me exist in the world. So Jade, hi Jade. Do you believe people born with Mercury retrograde have an easier time during Mercury retrograde? I assume you mean. Short answer, yes, absolutely. They're more used to that energy. If you have a Mercury retrograde in your chart, in your birth chart, like let's say you have a baby on May 10th and your baby is born with Mercury retrograde in its birth chart, yeah, a lot of times those folks will be fine during Mercury retrogrades. Well, the rest of us are all like, losing our minds or whatever and having, problems. The Mercury retrograde native people are like, yeah, we've been here the whole time. Welcome. Water is warm. Come on in. Yep, you're going to have to do everything twice here. So, yes, you will have to do extra steps. And they're just used to it. And that goes for a lot of, I basically make that assumption across the board. Like if you have a Venus retrograde in your own chart and in the sky by transit, there's also a Venus retrograde, you're going to be more equipped to handle that energy and feel comfortable than you might otherwise. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Excellent question. Keep them coming. So I think we are to the other eclipse. Yes, we are. I'm just going to speed on ahead. So just as a reminder, write it in your calendar, May 10th, May 9th, 10th, and 11th, just especially with that moon in Virgo, opposite Mars, mind your own business. Watch your own bobber, as my mom says. Don't want to get into any verbal fisticuffs, do we? So the 14th, I feel like the party really gets started. The moon enters Scorpio, and this is where the second eclipse is going to happen. It's a full moon in Scorpio. This is a bit of a different story than the new moon. This is a bit of more of it's not that great astro weather that I was talking about before. Now, the person who is in charge of the moon here in Scorpio is Mars, traditionally. And Mars is with Neptune. So this is pretty interesting. Now, a full moon, that's when the moon is the brightest. It has the most light on it. And so that is when, the brightness of the moon, it kind of reflects proportionally the amount of activity and busyness down here on Earth. And that's why we get this kind of stereotypical, like people act crazy during the full moon. I think it's just, we're just out doing more stuff. And when you're just out doing more stuff, it's like, the more molecules and energy you have in a container, and they're all doing their Brownian diffusion movements or whatever, and they're knocking into each other. And the more energy and activity you add to a container with molecules in it, the more they're bouncing off of each other and having interactions. I think that's exactly what's happening during a full moon, except we're the molecules and we're all just out there doing more stuff. And we have more, statistically speaking, just more opportunity to bang up against each other and have little skirmishes and arguments and confrontations. That's just a normal part of living, right? And so I don't know if it's necessary. I kind of wonder if it's like, is it that the full moon has some kind of correlation with, poor behavior? Because it always gets associated with poor behavior, right? We're not talking about people manically being generous out there. But I think it's less that full moons like make people, crazy or whatever. I think it's more just there's more people out there doing more activities and more stuff, and we just have to engage with each other more. And people don't get along with people a lot of the time. So I think that's full moon territory. In Scorpio, it's some uncomfortable topics coming up potentially. It's a culmination of things. So whatever you started 2 weeks ago on that Taurus new moon that's happening pretty much right now, whatever we're starting now, in 2 weeks, we're going to kind of see what that first culmination is of that. It's kind of like, okay, you wanted to do that thing. Now here's where you are. How's it going? What do you see? What's the outcome? I don't love Mars with Neptune here. It's like, we're going to want to act. We're going to want to feel. We're going to want to act on our feelings. And Neptune does not provide good details, does not provide the truth all the time. So again, this is just, I keep saying the same stuff. Just make sure before you act or before you engage with the other, that you have your facts straight, that you know what's going on, and that you ask questions. It's like, okay, well, how do we deal with that then? Come to conversations, come to situations and circumstances with compassion and curiosity, not assumptions and reactions. That's easier said than done. That's some Hallmark shit. That's very easier said than done. But I think that is really what would be most helpful for us here. Again, these are great beginnings and great endings. So they're high energy, kind of pivotal pivotal times in life, this 2-week chunk of time here. Now, Venus, she's in charge of the sun of this pair, and she can't really see what's going on here. She's not really in communication with this moon, and neither is Jupiter. And so that was the other thing I noticed, is that Mars is a little confused. Mars is having a lot of feelings. Mars is also very hopeful and optimistic in that his actions will work out. But this full moon also is not getting a lot of helpful energy from Jupiter and Venus. So that was the other reason where I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if I love this super a lot. But you know what? We don't have to like it, because not everything in life is going to feel good and be fun. That's just how it works. That's how it works. So yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, and then Venus is on Chiron. I don't have Chiron up on here, but I do like to peek at Chiron from time to time. I don't like what Chiron does, but well, I like some of what he does. I guess I shouldn't say that. Let me get him up here. So if you follow Chiron, another thing that I noticed is Venus is right on there. So whatever is going on, I again, like, we're just adding on more kind of womp womp. It doesn't look super fun. Chiron is kind of these recurrent, emotionally prickly things. It's like a thorn in your foot that just keeps being there and you just can't seem to get it out. That's how I feel about Chiron most of the time. Now, that's kind of cynical because Chiron also has to do with healing and healing. So there is a potential for healing here. This could be like kind of a medicine situation where the medicine goes down and it's not very tasty, but we might actually need it to accept and to heal from an experience. So this full moon could be about that. It could, yeah, it does feel a little bit like that bitter medicine that is necessary. And last point, Saturn. So Saturn's keeping things on the rails here, I believe. What we can see on this eclipse day, we've got that sun opposite moon, of course, nodes here opposing each other, of course, as they do. And it's what the modern people call a T-square. So we've got two squares in an opposition, and Saturn is the pivot point, the hinge. And it's a pretty stable hinge. Saturn is our voice of reason here. Saturn is our ability to rationalize our way through whatever the hell this is. It's keeping us on the rails. That's what I feel like. So wherever Saturn is, wherever Aquarius is in your chart, that is kind of what's responsible for holding this together in my mind. That's my opinion. Saturn could also represent the structures in place that are rigid, that might be making this transition in the eclipse axes harder. So if change is required of us in Taurus and Scorpio, if in those areas we are seeing beginnings and endings, we are seeing a need for transition, for change, it could be that if Saturn is too rigid, if Saturn is not allowing for flexibility, which it does not do well in Aquarius, this is not a flexible place, that could be a problem. That could be some friction. And I think this is basically saying, one thing that it could basically say is that whatever these changes are, we need to have the structures reflect that in Aquarius. Whatever the Aquarian structures are, they need to reflect what is required to make those changes possible. So Saturn's moving direct here. It's in its power. It has the tools. But again, Saturn and Aquarius, and I get to say this because I'm an Aquarius rising. I get to say this. We're rigid. I get to say this. Saturn's rigid. And it's not that they can't change their mind. It's not that they don't appreciate that and accept changes in mind. But Aquarius, especially, I think they just think so hard about things and they're so thoughtful and they spend so many years just coming up with their ways of living and being and thinking and doing, that to change it is rough. And for the fixed signs, change is rough in general. So here's my little dad sermon about fixed signs. I just saw, I was writing about it in my journal, and then I saw a meme about it. it's not an original thought, and it's certainly not my thought, but this idea of that endings are failures. This is something that fixed signs are really, really good at. They think that endings are failures. And this is another thing I get to be cynical about, because I am also a fixed sign and I'm going to project all over this. We have a hard time changing fixed signs. That's the other side of the coin. We're very dependable. We're very consistent. We like to do things the same all the time. Everybody else benefits from that because, humans, we need some level of consistency, right? But when it comes to actually making changes in life, letting go of stuff, it's not our strong suit. It's really not. And that's exactly what's being asked of us here. And I think the most helpful thing that I have heard from that dilemma is just that endings are not failures. I think fixed signs feel like they're so intent on maintaining. There's like Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, Taurus. Once they get something going, to maintain, that is the point. And to let go of that and to let things take their natural course and to end is like, that's not how fixed signs operate. That's more of the mutables job. So I just want to bring that up, that just a reminder for myself, a reminder for all the fixed sign babies out there. If we let something go, if something ends, not a failure at all. And in fact, it can sometimes be the most humane, compassionate, honest thing that we can do. And also it's natural, like literally nothing lasts forever. It's kind of the delusion that the fixed signs have, that they can somehow usurp this idea of impermanence. We think that, if I want it hard enough, it'll last forever. But that's just, so I think we're really being confronted with impermanence here and being asked to let some things go. So just to wrap it up with that, Saturn being in that T-square with the eclipse, I feel like that is it's frictive, but I think it also has the power to stabilize some things here into some rationality, because again, Mars and Venus is passion, desire. It's not thinking with the brain, it's thinking with everything else, which all of those types of thinking are equally important. So I'm not saying that, the Saturn type of brain or the daytime thinking or the rational material world thinking is better or more superior. Not at all. I'm just calling for balance, just calling for some balance, and not, paying all of the attention to one or the other, immaterial or material. So then I thought this was interesting. Maybe it's not, I'm not sure, but I am going to be journaling on this day. I think it's kind of neat that the moon leaves Scorpio right after that eclipse. And the first thing it does is it runs into Jupiter and it runs into Mercury. And so I spent so much time thinking about this yesterday. So we got moon. We can see that as soon as it enters Sagittarius, it runs into a trine with the ruler. It is received by Jupiter here. And so it seems to me like there's a story of like the eclipse and kind of figuring some shit out. And anytime the eclipse happens, it is like that game board with the pieces on it. Those pieces get moved around and we're able to kind of maybe see things more clearly for how they are and then make the decisions we need in these great beginnings and great endings, right? But the moon running into Jupiter here, it's almost like the moon has an instinctual understanding. It's like, we understand now. We know what's going on. We've had all of this confusion. We've had all of this fog. And now we've kind of burned some of that watery fog off from Neptune, and we know what's going on. The feeling center of the moon in Sag, it instinctually, this is that very fast hell yes or hell no kind of understanding. And then right after that, the moon opposes Mercury. And it's almost like you can hear the brakes screeching on that intuition. And now the mind is like, oh, hold up, wait, we should think about these other 18 billion things though. What about this? What about this? What about this? And meanwhile, like the moon and Jupiter are just like, no, we know what's up. We know what's going on. But there's this opposition with the mind. So just again, just because we kind of know, and just because we're pretty dang sure, we can still hold on for a second before taking the step. Now, if you aren't in that situation and you do need to act quickly, I think on the 16th, this moon trine Jupiter. Now, this could be a really great kind of push, a little bit of like jet fuel to help nudge you off of the diving board, if that makes sense. So yeah, depending on your situation, this could be a moment to really trust the intuition. This could be a moment to not forget that, even if the mind is saying a bunch of stuff, even if all of the data and the facts and the information that's coming in is painting a certain type of picture, I do want us to really listen to and not forget whatever that instinctual fire type of message is on the 16th. So sit down with yourself on the 15th and the 16th and see what's in there. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be meditating. I'm going to be watching whatever is happening. Okay, and then the 17th and the 18th, this is where we get Mars joining Neptune exactly. So here we are. We've got Mars finally surpassing Neptune. Great day for inspired action. Great day to act on a spiritual thing, to act in service to forgiveness, to act in service of acceptance, to act in service of one love. Those are all cool manifestations of Mars, Neptune, Pisces in my mind. Action and effort toward the spiritual, toward the artistic. Now, what I find less helpful is action toward material world stuff like forms or, arguments with people. I would try to avoid those on this day. Conflict where we can come to forgiveness or resolution, maybe. Is there a potential here for confusion and argument? Yes, I believe that there is. So just be careful with that one. There, like I said, there's potential for a lot of cool stuff, but I am a little weary about it. Now on the 19th, we finally got Mars between Neptune and Jupiter. It's almost like Mars is trying to figure out what's real. It's like all this fantasy shit. And then we got Jupiter. Eventually, I think Mars is going to get into Aries and be like, okay, yes, this is the truth. Now I understand. Now I'm with Jupiter, but certainly the middle to the late part of the month, the action might still be a little confused. We still might be kind of trying to figure out what we need to act on exactly. And at this point too, we're getting Mars in that sextile with Pluto and the sun. This feels very potent, powerful. All these sextiles. This is a month of, I don't think I've said that word this many times in a forecast ever. Powerful discussions. Anytime we get Capricorn involved, anytime we get Taurus involved, we get resource management. These are the signs of Earth. They are in charge of practical Earth matters. Once we get resources and stuff and things, we like to maintain that. We like to keep that train of resources going. And that's what Capricorn and Taurus and Virgo are all very good at. And it seems to me like there could be some actions or things happening that might be just a rearrangement, an adjustment of those resources, or how can we plan to hold on to them? This is a trine. This is a supportive aspect. So Taurus's ability to make plans, backup plans, have insurance, all of those types of things. That's what the sun is really interested in right here. And it's kind of being cajoled on by a Pluto in Capricorn. So also being aware that we could be clinging to things. So it's okay to try to come up with like a resource management plan. I need to figure out my 2-year plan, my 3-year, 5-year plan of, if I have these things and stuff, or I have these routines in my life, kind of stabilizing it, how am I going to keep all this stuff going? But Pluto there can also speak to what we're clinging to, vices or preferences or things that maybe aren't serving us anymore, but that are really, really easy to keep doing. That trine is easily free-flowing energy, but that kind of free-flowingness, not good across the board. Sometimes things flow freely along there that aren't exactly helpful, like clinging to things. And that's what Pluto likes to do, is cling. So just making sure that, we can use that for that practical planning and resource management kind of stuff, but also just not overly clinging to anything that maybe has served its purpose and is no longer helpful because, things change, and things that were once helpful sometimes are no longer helpful. And then we get Gemini season. So happy Gemini season. We get the sun going into Gemini. That's on the 20th, 21st of May, depending on where you are. And we get the Cazimi of Mercury right after that. So let's stop and talk about this Mercury story for a second. The Cazimi, what is that? That is when a planet that we can see visually. For me, this is a visual event. I do not use Cazimis with outer planets because we can't see them. Now, when a planet is Cazimi, we couldn't have seen it anyway. Anytime a planet is within 15 degrees of the sun, we can no longer see it. It goes invisible because the sun's rays are so blinding that the planet gets shrouded behind that brightness. And the Cazimi is the middle part of that journey. And this whole planets going out of the beams and into the beams and invisibility and out of visibility, and then joining with the sun and leaving. This is all very visual to me. So again, that's why I'm only using the visible planets for that technique. But we do get this with Mercury now on the 21st. I believe that is the day of the Cazimi. Mercury Cazimis last about 12 hours, and they are a great time to have understanding, to get good downloads about thoughts. It's a good day to meditate and journal about the thoughts that you might have or the insights that you might come upon. But it's the middle of the Mercury retrograde. So if on the 10th of May, when all of this retrograde stuff really got going, now by the 21st, we're halfway through that story. And if you do have issues that the Mercury retrograde has brought up, whether you're just reconsidering something, you're still trying to figure out what to do or what to think, at this point, we're kind of in the middle of that story. And hopefully about now, we're starting to get the information we need to see a potential solution, to see how this could resolve over that story. So hang in there. And this is another reason why I'm like, yeah, I know there's a lot of get up and go to do the shit and be inspired. And in the Northern Hemisphere, it's spring and everyone's like, oh, the pandemic is over, so we're all doing all the shit. So, everyone's just buzzing to just be active. But it's again, our navigational equipment in May is not trustworthy. Okay. So just be careful when you're doing your stuff out in the world. Gemini gets such a bad rap. I'm going to say some lovey-dovey things about Gemini. It's not flaky. It's adaptable. At worst, it can be flaky, but it depends on the rest of the chart. It always depends on the rest of the chart. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, probably. I know the people that listen to me understand this already, but it's never just about one thing. So usually with Gemini, the most constructive, beautiful things that I see are just people who are incredibly adaptable. They have a lot of different skills, and they have so many facets and interesting parts about themselves that it allows them to meet a lot of different people where they are. And being able to meet people where they are is such a beautiful, compassionate thing to do. Another thing that gives Gemini the ability to do that is their curiosity. It's the most curious sign in the zodiac. It wants to just ask questions and argue and debate and bring in more information and do all of those things. And that's how we meet people where they are, is we ask them questions and we get to know about them. And Gemini is so good at that. So they don't have to be this two-faced person, although certainly we can see that anytime you have someone who is not a boring person, which honestly, most of us, even those of us who aren't Gemini, all of us have 12 signs. All of us have all the planets. All of us are pretty interesting, and all of us have many facets. Gemini just has more. They have more facets. So those of us who are maybe, I'm only 2 or 3 note, a Gemini might be 7 or 8 note. And that's a much more interesting cuisine. So I love having them on my team. I love having Geminis in my life. But any sign has a shadow. And one of the shadows of Gemini is kind of duplicity and, not understanding that even though in the mind we can understand that there's space for all of this duality and all of the differences, that the human psyche does rely on some level of consistency. So making space that both of those things are true. But I do like Gemini season. Now, this is going to keep trucking along, this Mercury story. And we can see Mercury moving in, then regressing back into Taurus. And as soon as Mercury regresses back into Taurus, it comes back into this trine with Pluto. Now, if you want to write down these dates, I kind of skipped ahead here, but the Mercury trine Pluto. So there was one on April 28th, yesterday. That was with Mercury going direct. And then on May 25th, Mercury retrograde trines Pluto again. And then on June 10th, that's the third and final Mercury trine Pluto. And I was already kind of mentioning maintenance of resources, dispersal of resources, or just material things that you find valuable or helpful. Systems or structures in your life that are breaking up, or systems and structures of your life that are getting an update or some maintenance, some TLC. That could be a theme. We're trying to reduce loss. We're trying to hold on. With Taurus, usually wants to preserve resources. It wants to keep what we have. That's the point. Plans on how to upkeep those structures and ways of living. What preferences, vices, desires do we have? Are they healthy? Are they unhealthy? Mercury trining Pluto, I think, is helping us to kind of ask all of those questions about how we're kind of engaging with the material plane. Another thing I thought of too, and I had mentioned another way. So that power of Pluto, that clinging to resources that Pluto can have us doing, with Taurus, we can kind of get into ruts with the things that we like, for better or for worse. And I think the main thing here is that we just never want to value one thing absurdly above anything else. Like that's what Pluto does. It distorts things, and it makes things like, if there's a duality pair, or if there's a spectrum of existence, Pluto will want to do the extreme. It'll want to take the most extreme position or get really singularly obsessed about something. So if there is a particular resource or thing that you feel like has power over you, like maybe your bank account is really low and you just can't stop buying cheeseburgers, Mercury trine Pluto might be able to help us navigate that issue, So, all right. Endings are not failures. Endings are not failures. Endings are not failures. And where are we? Are we pretty much at the end of the month? What else? Mars goes into Aries. That's what we almost skipped over here. So come the 25th, now we got the Aries party really going. We've got Mars, Jupiter, Venus, all in Aries. And on the 25th, the moon is there to check it out. So we're going to be extra aware of what is going on in Aries on the 25th of May. Keep your eyes out. 26th of May as well. That is the day where we will emotionally kind of be linked in with Aries, and we can see what all these planets are doing in here. Now, Mars is at home in Aries, and all of these other planets benefit from having him there. It's like having, being at your friend's house and you don't really know where anything is. But if your friend is home, they can actually show you where the beer is in the fridge that you're allowed to drink. So that is helpful. And that's what Mars is going to do for the benefics when he goes in there, is they're going to get a little bit more direction. So whatever Jupiter is kind of aspiring and learning about, and whatever Venus is desiring and wanting to pursue or do or connect with or create, once Mars gets in there, it's like the taskmaster gets in there and he's like, okay, you do this, we're going to make some decisions, we're going to delegate, and we're going to decide, and we're going to get on this. So, once the end of the month, that last week of May looks pretty interesting. It looks pretty active. It looks like things are going to be moving. Venus is going to square Pluto. This can be kind of intense feelings, maybe intense feelings about people, about your values, and it might not be the most beneficial. It might not be the most helpful type of influence. So if, there could be a leveraging here, there could be a bit of a power struggle or a power dynamic of some kind. There could be just Venus being really enamored or just overly focused maybe on one particular person or thing. So just making sure that if we are feeling like our attention is just being pulled and pulled and pulled and pulled, and we can't keep our attention on what we need to keep it on, especially if our attention is being pulled away by vices, relationships, things that we enjoy or prefer, and those types of pulls are getting in the way of us getting done what we need to get done. That's when we know that Pluto is overstepping its bounds a little, and we're kind of running those programs a little too strongly, as Jason Hawley puts it. Little side note, I love framing stuff like that. When we're talking about like behaviors in humans, we're talking about like the things that humans are doing, thought patterns, neural pathways. I heard is a different astrologer, Jason Hawley. He referred to it as we're just running these programs, and I love that so much because it makes it more separate. It detaches the person from the behavior, and it not only then allows us to judge that situation less morally, but it allows that person to also detach and see it as a behavior that they could change, versus like, oh my God, that's me. I am my behavior. I'm this horrible person, or I'm this amazing person because I did this particular thing. I like talking about it in terms of running programs, either too strongly or not strongly enough. And when we get Pluto involved, it's like the programs that the planets are trying to run for us effectively, they just get run too strongly a lot of times. So, yeah, if you find yourself a bit obsessive about anything for a couple days at the end of May, just hang in there. It'll pass. It usually does. And then Venus will get into a much more comfortable position on the 29th, 28th, 29th of May. She's going to move into Taurus in her home sign, her nighttime sign. Oh, and the moon's going to be there. How nice. So that pretty much ends the month. Gemini New Moon. Yep, that's here too. So a little bit more. Let's talk Venus talk, Taurus talk. Let's talk Taurus. But before I do, let's check in with this chat. Let's check in to see if there's people. Oh, wow, there is. Okay. Oh my gosh. Hi, thanks for joining. Okay, so is an eclipse a bad time to initiate a new thing I really want to, in spite of the impending retrograde and eclipse? Yes. So this is why this particular eclipse is so darn interesting, is because the rest of the sky weather is really good. Like in general, that Taurus new moon that's happening tomorrow is like great sky weather in general to plant something, to initiate something. But like I said, it is a little unstable, and that's what you're kind of baking in. So this is the question. This is the one that I don't really know the answer to, and only you can know the answer to this. But do you want eclipse energy baked into that? Every 6 months of this particular eclipse cycle, do you want that Taurus, Scorpio energy to be baked into your whatever you're doing? And if you do, that's great. That works. If you don't, then I wouldn't. It really depends on what you're trying to initiate. Very, very much. Yeah, because that little bit of instability is baked in. So, and this is where I think it is really interesting to experiment and use ourselves as guinea pigs. Now, this is a whole astrological magic discussion that I am out of my lane now officially to discuss. I'm a baby. I don't know anything about this stuff outside of your average amateur. But I mean, there's some level of experimentation that I think we're going to do it, right? So honestly, like this is that experiment. This is my first virtual astrology club on YouTube. So I'll be watching in 6 months. We'll see how this goes. If I go off the air in 6 months, we can say, okay, maybe it wasn't a good idea to, to root that into the eclipse. But also, you know, it's great beginnings. So it could be a great beginning, you know? Yeah. So it really, really depends. It's not a straightforward answer, but this stuff is not straightforward, is it? Another great question, does the moon being in fall in Scorpio make it worse? Short answer, probably. Yeah. The moon, what does the moon want to do? The moon wants to nourish. The moon wants to grow. It wants to be safe and feel comfortable so that it can grow. That's what the moon does. So we can feel safe. In Scorpio, that's a Mars ruled place. That's a battlefield. There's not a lot of connection or growthiness necessarily happening in Scorpio. So the moon isn't as able to have its needs met in Scorpio or to feel comfort, particularly physical or emotional safety or comfort. Sorry if that's a Scorpio moon out there. Usually they're really good at navigating those kinds of things though for other people and themselves. But yeah, doesn't feel great. It's not what I would choose. If you could ask me, which one would I choose? A Taurus moon or a Scorpio moon? I think most of us who know the technical details would probably choose a Taurus moon. So short answer, yes, it does make it worse. But better, worse, according to who, depending on the situation. It's so hard. It's so hard to say if something is better or worse sometimes. But yeah, thanks for the question. Very, very good question. Okay. So where are we? Wow. What a month. Mars, Jupiter. Is there anything to say about Taurus before I do that? So I've said a lot about Taurus. I think at this point you can tell that Taurus is stable. It is dependable. It is growthy. It is consistent. It likes to preserve, to plan, to keep. So that's what Venus is really going to help us do once she goes into Taurus at the end of the month. Venus in Taurus, she draws resources to her. She's not going out and getting stuff. That's Libra's department. That's, you know, air and fire. They're, you know, going out and doing things. Venus in Taurus is just going to kind of sit there and do what she knows to do best and allow the abundance to grow. And we kind of have to have the patience to let things grow. That's the other thing too. So very growthy, but we do have to have some patience. Now, speaking of not patience, Mars and Jupiter, there's a conjunction on the 29th. And this is much more like victory is mine. Mars is competitive, it is decisive, athletic, and Jupiter is winning and growth and abundance and wealth. So a lot of times this is victory in a lot of senses. It's we have an understanding and we're taking the action based on that understanding. So if you do have actions to take at the end of the month and you need some help with confidence, with assertiveness, if you find yourself being someone who has a hard time being assertive, has a hard time being confident in what you know, this is a great time to step into that and try to lead with a confident foot. I think it's going to be a little easier. And I'm very excited just in general about June. I think we can kind of see what's queuing up here. We've got Mars in Aries. We got Venus in Taurus. We're going to eventually have Mercury in Gemini. So, and we got Saturn in Aquarius. So at the end of May and then into June, we're going to get a lot of signs or a lot of planets in their own home signs being very effective. So yeah, May really does feel so much like a reorganization, a readjustment in so many ways. We've got a lot of planets shifting their energies in new signs. We've got Mercury recombobulating everything. And I do feel like at the end of May, what we're going to be left with is a whole rearranged situation that we can take into June to try to really profit and grow and do and make the most of all of the rearrangements that we've made in May. So let's think here if there's anything else before. Let's just talk about that new moon and then we'll wrap it up. So Gemini new moon ruled by a retrograde Mercury. I don't love this one. See what I'm talking about? I don't normally like talk about new moons and full moons like that they're all perfect. I'm pretty critical. And that's what you get with me. But I'm critical for a reason. Like there's always a technical reason why I'm like, we should be careful about this particular part of this particular thing. I'm just looking for my notes here. Hold, please. I just want to just recap really quick the days to mind your own business. So the 10th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th, again, mind your business. And then on the 24th, that was the other day. That was the day I was trying to find. So the 24th, that's another day to mind your own business. And that's because we've got still Mars with Neptune and we've got the moon in Pisces. This was the day. That's a Tuesday, May 24th. There could be confusion and friction and feeling like we need to act, but really not, again, not having all the material world things in order. So mind your own business on the 24th. Yeah, and then by the end of the month, we just have that Gemini new moon. So wherever Gemini is in your chart, I think it would be a really like what I feel like would be a good excuse me, intention to set for this Gemini new moon on May 30th at the end of the month is if it's ruled by a retrograde Mercury, let's redo something. Let's pick something to redo that we've already done. And we never thought that we would have to redo it, but we're going to redo it. And we're going to do it better than ever. That feels right to me because so much, these retrograde planets are redoing it. It's a second chance, and second chances are really beautiful. And by the time we get to a second chance, we're usually not that happy, right? Because something has gone wrong. Otherwise, we wouldn't require to do it again. So we're usually kind of like, meh. And that's why we don't like Mercury retrogrades. But we could reframe it in that, having a second chance is really awesome. And I think that could be maybe what this Gemini new moon is about. And particularly second chances or redos that have to do with the Taurus area as well, because that's been wrapped into this whole retrograde situation. Is it didn't only involve the Gemini parts of your chart and those house topics, but also the Taurus ones. So yep, bringing in all of those. You can Google, whatever houses those are and what significations those are and squish them together and see if anything makes sense for you. Now, Mercury is at 26 degrees. It's at its station degree. And what I thought was so interesting, and now this is maybe putting the horse in front of the cart here, but I found it very interesting. It's like we're starting this new intention. We're starting this whole new thing. It's ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is in like a 10-day square combination square with Saturn. It's like Mercury stations at 26 degrees of Taurus, right at the exact place where it's squaring Saturn in Aquarius. It feels like, oh my gosh, like we've been reconsidering so many things. And now Saturn is sitting down and giving me the what for and telling me how it really is and telling me the reality. And now I have to like have this very sober discussion with Saturn about like what's real. And that lasts for so many days. So Gemini itself is kind of this more, I don't know, it's just more, it's lighter, it's youthful, it's curious, it's got its own kind of intellectual vibrancy, effervescence. I like that word for Gemini, effervescence. And that's, we want to have that effervescent quality of renewal and beginning, but there is this tone, this very serious, sober tone with Saturn coming in with that square. So, we really, it might be a very intellectual new moon because we do have this air, these air planets, these air situations. We've got Mercury, our thinking planet, and Saturn, who's building in a very analytical place. There's some thinking that's going on. There's some thinking that's going on here and some planning. Yeah, thinking and planning. So if you've got big plans to make, It's a good time to do that at the end of the month. And with that, my babies, my sweet, sweet friends of the internet, I think I'm done. I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Great advice. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, the Mercury retrograde advice is always clutch. The first person that I heard speak about that was Austin Coppock, as far as like explicitly saying, you know, schedule yourself kindly, give yourself room in between. And I've been doing that for years, and it never fails to come in handy. So thank you so much, everybody, for engaging. This is obviously going to be here. So if you have any questions, you can email me. My email is aligninglightastro@gmail.com. So it's shortened Astro. And you can ask me any questions about anything I've said here. Otherwise, Aligning Light Astrology is my practice, www.aligninglightastrology.com. I am doing consults. My books are always open. I am only booked out about 2 weeks right now. So you can get in pretty quickly if you need to book with me. But I think that's it. How do I shut this down even? Do we know? It's my first time. Oh, I go to Zoom. All right. We did it. We did a technology.